Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And cards inspired by bling. These are the Warm Tones Positively Dazzling Gems, which have very pretty warm colors. So yellow, orange, pink, red. I skipped the red and I went with yellow, orange, and pink and created very vibrant backgrounds using Distress Spray, Distress Oxide Spray, and some Distress Spritz. And then multiple types of splatter, all the fun things. So, as always, everything I used is listed and linked in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links and end up placing an order, I do get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. It is what helps pay the bills, keeps my heaters running, enables me to keep bringing out content. And yeah, let's get right into making these cards. So the very first thing I did was take a couple pieces of Canson XL watercolor paper, and I have the Simon Says Stamp Crochet Blocks stencil, which I've used many times. It's just a current favorite. And I am going to apply some opaque matte texture paste over this. And I'm not bothering with a grip mat or taping anything down. I'm not even going to cover the entire stencil. I just want a little bit of the pattern. And this is something you could do like in batches, like have just a whole bunch of pieces of watercolor paper or mixed media paper, something that can handle whatever type of technique you want to do, and just do a whole bunch at once. Like grab a bunch of stencils, grab some paste, and apply it, because I want to apply the paste and then I need to let it fully dry. So doing, a batch of these, and then the next time you sit down to create, you've got all of these backgrounds with different patterns, whatever, and then you can just go to town and start mucking around with sprays, inks, whatever floats your boat. So I applied the paste over the stencil, just randomly. Again, not aiming for perfection here. I just want a little bit of this pattern. And then sealed up my paste again with the press and seal, and then I'm going to clean off my stencil, clean off my palette knife, and let these backgrounds completely dry, which doesn't honestly take that long. It'll always depends on the paste you use, your climate, etc., etc. But for me, mine was dry, and I think fully dry. I think I came back to it like an hour later. I honestly don't even know. Because again, I would just compartmentalize. So once it was dry, I pulled out just my flour sack cloth just to keep things a little bit more contained. And I am going to use 4 different sprays. 2 distress sprays, which are picked raspberry and carved pumpkin. A distress oxide spray in mustard seed. And then the distress spritz in picked raspberry. So the distress sprays are just liquid and color. The oxide spray is liquid, color, and pigment. And then the spritz is shimmer. So you won't really see that at all. At the very end, I'll use my flashlight to show the sparkle because it's fabulous. And yeah, spray, spritz with water, muck around with it, have fun. That's it. This is just simple, And because these, of course, are very water reactive, the spraying water just moves things around more. So you can see I'm like tilting this, letting it run, creating like drippy effects. I've got some just paper towel to kind of absorb some of the excess. This does get messy, which doesn't bother me in the slightest. But if it does, you can wear some gloves, But all of these inks, sprays, etc., they do wash off with either a vigorous amount of scrubbing or just over time, as you wash your hands, it all wears off. So like I said, I don't mind getting inky. It's just part of the process and it's fun. So I kept just mucking around with these, just spraying water, all the things. And then I sped up the drying with my heat tool. You can let them air dry. It doesn't matter. But I sped up the drying with my heat tool just to get these mostly dry, because I want to add a bunch of splatter. And if they were still wet when I add the splatter, that could create a fun look too. Like I said, just experiment. you know. But if you splatter on them while they're wet, you won't have like actual splatter. Like the color will start to like run and move and things. So like I said, that could be a really fun look. It just depends on what you want to do. But I wanted mine dry to keep the splatter, a little more prominent. And once these are dry, I'm going to use my white and black gouache to add splatter. Now the white splatter, because these backgrounds are all like water reactive, distress spray stains, oxide spray, etc. The white will absorb that color as it dries. I'm fine with that. Like some of it'll show just kind of lighter, but if you can't really tell on these backgrounds because by the time I'm done, there's so much going on. But yeah, it's not going to stay like crisp white. That's fine. So I added white gouache to my palette and then watered it down a bit. And then you just use my big old fan brush to add a bunch of splatter. I let that dry. And then I'm going in with black gouache and doing the exact same thing. So I'll put a bit of it on my palette. I'll thin it out with a little bit of water. And then I will splatter this onto these backgrounds and allow all of that to dry. And the black is definitely like intimidating for some. I love it. I don't know why. It's fun. Mucking around like this and just being intentionally messy it's therapeutic. It's fun. I recommend it. Whether you have an actual project in mind or not, just mucking around, play with the sprays and the splatter and the things and just make a good old mess. And if you end up with something you can use, most of the time you can. Your background, you might not be happy with it in the end, but at the very least, you had fun with it. And generally, if, you're not happy with just the background as it is, die cut it, die cut a bunch of flowers from it or leaves or whatever, depending on the color scheme. So off camera, I did some very messy sewing, as you can see, on just the corners of these pieces. I tried to film it. Trust me, I had so much issues. I do not know what my problem was. I don't know if it was like my bobbin was messed up something. I cannot even explain how difficult it was this time to sew this. It was nuts. I had thread break-in and it was actually quite frustrating, but that also contributed to being extra messy because since the thread kept breaking and I had to keep redoing it, like I made a mess. In the end, I was happy with it. So I'd create a little thread nests and like use some of that broken thread and just, as you can see, I did some zigzag and straight stitching on the corners, left all those threads hanging out, and in the end, it was good. I'll have to like go back and see if it was just that specific, like this black thread, if my bobbin and is messed up. I don't know. I've never had an issue so far. Like sewing on my cardstock, this is the first time I've had threads breaking, and it happened over and over again. So something was up, but in the end, I made it work. And then I took my paper distresser and roughed up all of these edges with that because I just also really like making a mess that way too. So roughed up all those edges, and then I pulled out some black soot distress ink and just my OG, Ranger blending foam here, and just applying that not all around, just here and there, and even going like right onto the background, not just the edges, with that black ink. So again, just to kind of create some more like grunge, really. And then I would also take the blending foam and I was lightly going over the areas that I'd stenciled. So it's just catching on that paste and it's making that crochet block flower pattern like pop up a little bit more. So yeah, just mucking, it's therapeutic. It's fun. Being intentionally messy is freeing, especially in card making, because I rail against that a lot. The concept of perfection and everything needing to be clean and pristine and perfect, and just nope. Perfection is 100% overrated, and if you struggle with it, I also highly recommend mucking around, making a mess. Do it on purpose. I think you'll have fun with it. So for my main focus of this card, I'm using the Whirl Bay Leaves wafer die. I've used this in multiple videos in the past. It's one of my favorites. The detail is just chef's kiss perfection. All that piercing detail, which obviously can't really see when it's black cardstock, but in real life, love it. So that's what I did. I die cut it from black cardstock, and then I adhered these to the backgrounds with craft tacky glue. And I just love how that just black pops on these backgrounds. And again, and then all that piercing detail. It's so good. So I adhered those, and then I'm adding more splatter. This time we're going to add gold splatter. So I'm going to put these in my splat box for this, and then I've got my Gonzai Tombi Starry Colors, just the gold one, and I'd already worked it up with water really well. So got my fan brush loaded up with that and did just a heavy amount of gold splatter on these panels, and love it. Love it. You can't go wrong with gold. You just can't. So splattered those, set those aside to dry. While they were drying, I die cut my sentiments, and my sentiment is another oldie but goodie favorite, the Fancy Thanks wafer die. I use just the word, not the outline, and I die cut scraps of white cardstock, and then the top layer is Simon's matte gold cardstock, and I'm going to stack all these together to give them dimension. So 2 layers of the white cardstock die cuts, and then the top layer will be the matte gold. And once I've got these adhered together with my craft tacky glue, I'm going to adhere these to the card front panels. And once I adhere these, I just put my magnets on top, just something heavy. Anything heavy will work, because I've got texture going on the background, and then that leaf die cut as well. So putting something heavy on top just helps hold everything down to let the glue dry. So got those adhered into place, let those sit to dry. And then for the companion sentiments or sub sentiments, I'm using the reverse Thankful and Grateful sentiment strips, and trim these down with my paper trimmer. You could also use the sentiment label wafer dies. I've done that in other videos as well. But I trimmed down the sentiment I want for the inside, and then the one for the outside I trimmed down, and then trimmed it down even more, because the sentiment says for everything you do, and I just wanted the for everything. So I just cut that off. And then for that piece, since it's going on the front of the card, I just took a black marker. Any black marker is going to work. And I ran that along the edge of this cardstock. It just coats that exposed white cardstock there to make this look a little more seamless. It's another one of those little things that only takes, a few seconds, but it's just those little finishing touches that kind of give everything that little extra something. So completely covered that white cardstock with the black marker. And then to adhere these to the card front panel, I just trimmed down some little black foam squares, stuck these on the back, so this will also pop it up, and then it also just makes it easier to adhere, because like I said, there's a lot of texture going on in the background with the die cut and then the embossing paste and whatnot. So got those little foam squares into place, and then I can just pop these right under the sentiment. And then for the inside of the card, my card bases are top folding A2 white note cards, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I stuck it to one of my grip mats, and I used my Post-it tape right where the score line is so I don't get ink past the score line. And then I'm using that crochet block stencil again, and picked raspberry distress ink and a blending brush. And I'm not applying it across the entire stencil. I am, concentrating the color here and there, and then using whatever's left over on the brush and the stencil, pulling that color out so that I just get areas of the stencil to kind of mimic what I did on the card fronts. So got that on the inside. I'm going to repeat that in the same way on the second inside of the card. And then once I've got that ink blended, I can then adhere the sentiment strip that I had trimmed down onto the inside with the craft tacky glue. And that one just says, "I'm grateful to have you in my life." So, and that just kind of applies to everybody that's watching, because it's true. I appreciate you all. So adhere that to the inside. And then to adhere the card front to the card base, I'm using my Big Mama foam tape, because that'll give it a little bit of dimension, but it will also adhere everything nice and flat, because this is a little bit warped, not a ton. And yeah, the back is an absolute disaster with sewing, but that's fine. Again, intentional messiness. It just works. It just works. So I'm going to pop those onto the card bases. And then, of course, the pièce de résistance, the inspiration for the colors was those Warm Tones Pawsitively Dazzling gems, which, like I always say, because it's true, they look kind of like blah. you know, when I'm adhering them, because I'm filming straight down, so you can't see the, you know, the faceting and just the reflective shine and all that. But when I show at the end, I'll tilt these in the light so you actually see the pretty colors. So adhered those into place with dabs of craft tacky glue, and that finished these cards off. So I'll use my flashlight so you can see the sparkle on the background from that shimmer spritz. Like, oh, look at that. It's so fun. And it's fun when you do things like with embossing paste, because if you do the paste first and then sprays and whatever afterwards, it'll sometimes, especially things like the shimmer spritz and whatnot, will kind of gather around the paste. It's a neat effect. So yeah, it's subtle until the light hits it, and then you see the sparkle, and it's like, yep. Like, especially you can see it there at the top. Oh, I love it. I love it. Can't go wrong with sparkle or splatter or gold or mucking around and thread everywhere. So those were the cards. Like I said in the intro, links to everything will be in the description box below. Thank you all so very much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. It helps a ton, and I really appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!